In order to begin our work in Smoke, we are first going to create a project and user inside of Smoke. So let's launch Smoke. Either choose the Smoke icon from your dock, or if you have it in your Applications folder, double-click it in there. We're going to explore a couple of different options on this screen in order to get set up and ready to start working. The first thing we're going to look at is creating a project. Now on my machine, I already have some existing projects, so you may be seeing something different here, but we're going to start with a fresh new project. I'm going to click New. The first thing I want to point out is this option that says Volume. When you installed Smoke, you were asked for a location to store the Autodesk media storage. This is where Smoke will store any digital intermediates you create when you import media. I will explain that more fully when we import media. For now, all you need to understand is that this was chosen during your install and is ready to go. When you create a new project, you are asked some formatting decisions. Like many of the editing applications you may have seen in the past, these formatting decisions are about setting defaults, not locking you into a final answer. So when I choose my project resolution and formatting, I'm making some decisions that down the road will set defaults when I create sequences. This doesn't mean I can't change my mind later. Ideally, you should make choices here that are as close to the footage you're going to be bringing in as possible. I know that the footage I'm going to be bringing in will be 1920 by 1080, so I will choose that here. I also happen to know that the footage I'm working with for these lessons is 10-bit footage, not 8-bit footage. If I change this setting now, I won't have to keep changing it every time I create a sequence in the future, so I'm going to change this to 10-bit. The footage we're working with is also 23.976 frames per second. What I'm seeing here is a default configuration template for 1920 by 1080 that includes that frame rate. If that's not what you're seeing, you could always come into this menu to choose the right option. But if you are seeing 1920 by 1080 at 23.976 frames per second, great, let's leave that there. Under Cache and Renders, you're asked for a preferred format. What this refers to is if you ask Smoke to create new digital intermediates of footage when you import, what format should it create? Again, it's a preferred format. We're setting a default. You could always change that later. The last thing we need to pick is a name for our project. I'm going to call mine lynda.com tutorials. You can call yours anything you like. And once I have that done, I'm going to click Create. The other thing we need to do is create a user. Anytime you open Smoke, you open both a user and a project together. Different users can open the same project, and one user can have access to multiple projects. It's how the two come together that determines your working interface. When we create a user, we have specific user preferences that will be used as we work on whichever project we've opened. Again, I already have some users created on my machine because I've been using Smoke in the past. If you don't, you may see something different here. Either way, let's click New. We have one important choice to make when we create a user, and that's our keyboard shortcuts. There are different sets of keyboard shortcuts available inside of Smoke. I'm going to stick with this default Smoke set. You'll notice it also says in parentheses FCP7. What this means is that a lot of the editing shortcuts we'll have inside of this default set will be the same ones that you may have used if you've ever edited in Final Cut 7. I have edited in Final Cut 7, so these keyboard shortcuts make the environment more familiar for me. If you would like to use other keyboard shortcuts because you've used other Autodesk products and you're used to those, you can also choose either the Flame set or the original Smoke Classic set. I'm going to stick with the FCP7 set. I'm going to name my user Lynda Tutorials. You may name yours anything you like. And I'm going to create that user. Now that I have a project and a user, I'm ready to start Smoke. Make sure that lynda.com tutorials project is the one in your project dropdown, and make sure that new Lynda user that you created is in the user dropdown. And I'm going to click Start. And now we're ready to begin. In our next lesson, we're going to examine some preferences before we start importing our media. Whenever I start working with a new application, one of the things I like to do before I do anything else is look at my user preferences. I want to make sure the environment is set up in a way that works the best for me. Smoke has a number of options for customizing the environment, and I want to look at some of those now. The first thing I want to do is look at user preferences. You can always access those from this Autodesk Smoke menu for preferences, or the shortcut is Command-. Let's open those preferences. I want to look at a few of these tabs and examine some of the most basic preferences that you should always take a look at. As you can imagine, there are a lot more than we'll take a look at in this one video, but let's get you started. I'm going to first click on this tab that says General. There are two really important options I want to point out here. The first thing I want to talk about is autosave. One of the things I love about Smoke is that as I'm working, my project is continually saved for me. These preferences will determine how often that is happening. The reason you might change these preferences is because of the issues at both ends of the spectrum. First of all, if you're concerned about losing work, you might want to make sure your work is being saved often enough. But on the other side of things, every time those autosaves happen, there is a slight pause in your workflow. So if you find it happening too often, you might want to back it off a little bit. You can set that for yourself. There are two types of save in this autosave. The first is the soft save. What this means is that once every 3 minutes by default, you'll see a red pause icon come up. It's saving the project. But because it's a soft save, what that means is you can actually cancel that save by just moving your mouse or making any other action in the application. A hard save is a little bit different. When a hard save is started, you cannot stop it. At that point, the project will be saved. So what you're basically determining here is how often you are willing for your workflow to be stopped. Again, you're making a decision that balances how often you're willing to pause versus how often you want to make sure your work gets saved. The other option I want to point out on this window is the undo buffer. I'm pretty sure that the undo command is the most powerful command in every application we ever use. In Smoke, you can choose how many operations are saved for you to undo backward. Like any application that lets you change your undo buffer, if I raise that buffer, I am raising the amount of memory that Smoke needs to operate. So again, you want to balance this decision between how much undo history I'd like to have and how much system memory I need to operate it. You can change this value by clicking and dragging to raise the number. You can also click here to bring up a calculator and type a number. I typically leave my undo buffer set to 25. I found that to be enough to do what I need to do, but not so much that I'm slowing down my system. Let's also look at the user interface tab. There are two really important options here as well. The first is our tooltips. You'll notice that when I hover my mouse over something, I often get a little display telling me what that is. Now, for the sake of this course, I'm going to turn my tooltips off so they aren't distracting to you while you're using these videos. However, you can leave yours on as a way of helping you learn the system. I'm going to turn my tooltips off. The other thing I want to take a look at here is the settings for system color. Everyone has their own preferences of what looks the best to them while they're working. You should absolutely set these to whatever looks the best to your eyes. You're the one that's going to be looking at the screen while you're working. You can change the background color, which will change the color behind your working screens. You can raise the brightness of the overall interface. You can also adjust the contrast. As you're working, just start figuring out how that interface looks to you and come back here to make changes as you see fit. I'm going to actually take my brightness back down a little bit. And I'm going to click Close to close these preferences. Now that I've modified my user preferences, the interface is going to be set up to my specifications. In the next lesson, we're going to take a look at keyboard shortcuts. The last thing I want to point out for your preferences is there is an option for both viewing and modifying keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to go to my Autodesk menu and choose keyboard shortcuts, or you'll notice the shortcut for that is Option H. What this window gives you is a way of exploring all of the available keyboard shortcuts as well as setting keyboard shortcuts if you would like. You can search for any command here. So for instance, if I search for insert and do a search, it will take me to the first command in the list that has the word insert in it. You'll see here an insert edit is F9, just like it is in Final Cut 7 because I chose the Final Cut 7 keyboard shortcuts. And then you can search up and down the list to look for additional keyboard shortcuts. And if at any time you find something that you wish you had a keyboard shortcut for example, inserting a keyframe. This is something I do a lot, and as you can see, there's no keyboard shortcut assigned to that. If I would like to set a keyboard shortcut, with that command selected, I can double click in the empty keyboard shortcut field, and I will see in this window the option for setting a keyboard shortcut. I can set that keyboard shortcut by simply clicking what I'd like for it to be. I'm going to click Option K. When mapping keyboard shortcuts, you'll notice that in Smoke, they call the Option key the Alt key. If I like that keyboard shortcut, I can click Set. If I've chosen a keyboard shortcut that already exists somewhere else, I will get a message down here telling me I'm not allowed to create duplicate keyboard shortcuts. The keyboard shortcut I've chosen is not available. I will clear. I'll try instead Control K. I hit Control K and Set. And now I see that the keyboard shortcut for inserting a keyframe is Control K, and I have a Y here indicating yes, this is a keyboard shortcut that was set by a user. I will now close the keyboard shortcuts. Feel free to customize those keyboard shortcuts any way you like.